I was raised in Stockholm, and I heard a lot about the MS Estonia growing up, and as far as I understood, it was one of the biggest maritime disasters in modern times. But the more I delved into it, the more I understood that it might not be the story I usually thought it was.
Within an hour, Estonia sank.
But nobody seems eager to find out why.
Many question marks, but government decided not to investigate accident further.
I think they want to conceal the cause of the sinking.
I think they are hiding the truth of what happened that night.
There was simply no way this was an accident.
Nuclear submarines, military smuggling, explosions, and so on. So I started to ask myself, how?
Two clear warnings from the Russians to stop the smuggling operation on the Estonia.
We are saying that this was murdering 852 people.
The authorities in the Estonia case have acted ambiguously and somewhat insensitively, as if they had something to hide.
But they're always on the back of your mind. We're right here. Why couldn't you bring them up?
It would have been quite easy. It wasn't a difficult task.
The media has simply been inactive in exposing the truth.
So what we're looking at here is the planned journey from Tallinn to Stockholm with hundreds of passengers on board. The weather conditions are a cause for concern with strong winds and choppy seas, but the experienced crew remains confident in the ship's ability to withstand the journey. But just a few hours into the voyage, right about here, the critical moment arrived. The ship started tilting dangerously minute by minute, prompting passengers to engage in urgent measures for their escape. The Estonia crew swiftly sent out a distress call, which was answered by nearby Silja Europe, but with Estonia experiencing a blackout, they struggled to give their exact coordinates.
Mayday. Estonia, what's going on? Can you reply?
I remember a person standing on a sofa. She just screams out loud, but still I hear nothing.
I do remember lots of people around who were frozen, not moving, not doing anything.
There are many people holding onto a staircase railing. If you lose your grip, then you fall into the abyss and die.
My parents and my girlfriend were completely paralyzed. My mom said to me, "Survive, you have to make it."
It's all quiet from the MS Estonia from this point forward. The arrival of Viking Mariella, which had also been informed of the situation, only confirmed the worst.
Riktigt nära nu här. Det är precis fullt med ljus. Det verkar precis som det är en massa livbojar och ljus här runt omkring. Kanske båtar. De är kör.
Once a shining example of modernity and elegance, sailing the waters of the Baltic Sea with dignity and grace, now lays at the bottom of the sea, lost forever to the unforgiving waves. The sinking left a devastating aftermath on the world, claiming the lives of over 800 people and leaving a trail of unanswered inquiries in its wake. Now you may ask, was it simply a tragic accident caused by mechanical failure and a rough weather? Or was there something more sinister at play?
What we did was an action for finding the truth.
Stick with me now, because we're about to go beyond the surface level and search for what's underneath.
The Estonia, an Estonian-flagged passenger ferry carrying 867 people, sank tonight in the southwest of the Finnish archipelago.
Estonia capsized and sank in just a matter of minutes. Yeah, how on earth did this happen?
People were left with grappling questions that seemed impossible to answer. I mean, how could this happen? What were the circumstances that led to this tragedy? And perhaps the most importantly, why? As the dust settled, the government was faced with a Herculean task: how to manage the fallout, to care for the victims and deal with the sunken ship. Three questions loomed large on their minds. The outgoing Swedish Prime Minister at the time, also known as Carl Bildt, didn't mind his words, saying, "We need to make every effort to salvage the deceased. This is a matter of utmost importance, particularly for the families left behind. And this statement was later followed up by the incoming Prime Minister that proclaimed the following: "I believe that all efforts must be made to raise the ship, and I am prepared to advocate that, even if it's expensive, we should try." Well, of course these statements gave the families of the victims a ray of hope that they might be able to recover the loved ones and give them a proper burial. But what happens next? Well, that's a whole different ballgame. And where do I begin? Days and weeks went by, but nothing seemed to be happening. The frustration among the families of the victims grew as they questioned the government's actions, or their lack thereof. It started to appear that they had completely changed their stance, now strongly advocating against the idea of raising and investigating the ship and the deceased.
Why did it become a question whether to salvage or not to salvage? The initial instinct was to retrieve the deceased, but then this question arose, whether to salvage or not to salvage, that it even became a question.
What was even more remarkable, in my opinion, was the evident preference of the Maritime Administration, the Chief Legal Counsel, the forensic experts, and others involved. It was clear that they were inclined to do everything in their power to hinder the salvage of the ship and the deceased.
What's even more interesting to add here is that two divers, namely Stuart Rumbles and Ray Honor from the company Rockwater, were dispatched to conduct dives at the wreckage. Their mission was to assess the condition of the sunken ship and the possibility of recovery. During their dive, they encountered the grim sight of hundreds of lifeless bodies, but their general assessments on the possibility of a salvage operation would only add to the countless questions and controversies in the years to come.
Another body as you go straight through the doors, yeah? Oh, there's loads of them there, yeah? Okay, mate.
As divers, we could have brought them up. It'd take a few hours. Wouldn't have been a problem.
There's nothing practical to stop us recovering a body. We put it in a body bag and put it in a basket and lift it up to the vessel.
We're right here. Why couldn't you bring them up? We were shocked.
It wasn't what we were tasked to do.
The thing is here that Rockwater did consider the ship to be salvageable, along with all the bodies they encountered inside it. This should come as a relief to the people affected, right? On December 15th, 1994, Prime Minister Ingvar Carlsson made his public statement. And what's important to know here is that this was just 3 days after Rockwater sent their final report to the Swedish authorities. Now, isn't it rather shady that just 3 days after the divers submitted their report, the government swiftly announced that the ship shall remain in the sea, regarded as a burial site? It was like they conveniently disregarded Rockwater's painstaking findings, brushing them aside like inconsequential murmurs. The irony of timing, the doubts that linger, and the questions that refuse to be silenced. And just when you think the investigation has encountered enough issues, there always seemed to be a grander conspiracy lurking around the corner. They even proposed covering the ship with concrete and stones, a measure unheard of in maritime history. Not even renowned vessels like the RMS Titanic, Wilhelm Gustloff, RMS Britannic, and countless others have faced such a fate. Something is happening here, and there's much more yet to unfold. The year is now 1997, and 3 long years have passed since the disaster took place. 3 years of anticipation, frustration, and lingering questions. Inaccuracy, lies, and doubtfulness. Accused of being all of these things is the final report recently released by the Accident Investigation Board during this year. According to the survivors, it's far from the actual sequence of events as you can imagine. In the midst of swirling controversy and mounting suspicions, one question lingers ominously. Can we really trust these findings, or are they fabricated tales?
When the official accident investigation report by the JAIC, Joint Accident Investigation Commission, was released in 1997, my reaction was, okay, so this is how it went down. I'm no accident investigator, but there were other experts more knowledgeable than me who reached out to us, members of the parliament, and said, this doesn't add up. I mean that this report and the investigation that has taken place do not at all illuminate what actually happened.
The only time I was interviewed after the accident was a week later in Sweden when the police contacted me, and I provided a witness statement. However, I never got to speak with anyone from the Accident Investigation Board.
The Accident Investigation Board did not conduct systematic interviews with the survivors. One should perform witness testimonies as they can provide insights into how the ship behaved and sank, what they witnessed, and what they didn't. The report describes in detail the sinking sequence according to the Accident Investigation Board's perspective. But unfortunately, that might not be what actually happened. When delving into the material, one can observe, for instance, that a person was regarded as a witness simply because they were part of the crew, while I, as a passenger, have not been regarded as a witness.
In the midst of turmoil surrounding this final report, one passenger named Michael emerges as a crucial voice supporting the survivors' claims. Michael shares his own harrowing experience that aligns with their accounts, further challenging the official narrative. As the ship began to list, Michael's alarm clock fell from the nightstand, freezing time at just after 12 o'clock Swedish time, which corresponds to just past 1 o'clock Estonian time. This significant detail not only validates the survivors' testimonies, but also raises unsettling questions about the accuracy of the report's timeline. If the ship had indeed started listing much earlier, as Michael's fallen clock suggests, then the entire sequence of events and the official conclusions drawn from it come into doubt.
Everything can be criticized. Everybody can criticize. The reason of the accident was quite clear for us.
There is nobody denying that the bow visor has detached, but that was not the cause of the sinking.
We have found out, I'm sure we have found out the real reason and the real circumstances. And all other reasons or theories, they are not worth of serious thinking.
If you're already familiar with the Estonia disaster, you most likely know that the blame was attributed to the bow visor, which remains the official reason for the sinking to this day. But people had mixed opinions about this, and it triggered debates among maritime experts. They questioned whether the force of waves alone could truly tear off a component as substantial as a visor. Keep in mind that the bow visor is 9 meters wide, 12 meters high, and weighs a staggering of 64 tons. But let's pause and direct your attention to two intriguing photographs. Take a closer look at the first one and you'll notice those railings that were originally part of the ship's ramp. And now fix your gaze on the other. These railings were found sawed off, cast away on the seabed, a considerable distance from the wreckage. Investigators could not dismiss this chilling discovery. It defied belief that water alone could account for such precise sabotage. Dark questions arose about individuals who may have visited Estonia's wreck shortly after the tragedy, perhaps seeking something on the car deck. And the most disturbing part of this is that this information never found its way into official accounts. And when you combine this information with witness reports of military vehicles seen on the deck the very same day Estonia left Tallinn, a much more sinister chapter is about to commence. After all we heard from various sources until now, however twisted it may sound, however diverse the voices presenting their narratives to defy the official cause of the tragedy, the mystery endures to this day. But after several years, some voices emerged, claiming to hold the truth, and it unveils a relentless, unforgiving secret, one that has the potential to not just challenge but rewrite history itself.
All signs point to the Defense Forces, or some part of the Defense Forces, having knowledge of these intrusions on the cargo deck between September 28th and October 2nd, 1994.
They presuppose something of immense state or military interest.
People have started speculating in a smuggling operation. Were the Russians to blame for the modern Titanic?
The military smuggling on Estonia. When did the government know?
Truth about what was on Estonia's car deck during the night of the disaster is a question that will also receive an answer.
We know you are running the smuggling operation. We know you are running it via the ferry Estonia, and you need to stop or else.
Understanding this chapter means rewinding to a time when a heavy veil of oppression shrouded the region. In the hearts of Estonian people, a desire for freedom burned bright. Little did they know that their fight for independence would trigger a sequence of occurrences. As the Soviet Union fell, a power vacuum emerged, and Estonia's borders became a focal point for change. This small nation's journey to self-rule unintentionally led to a hidden trade in military artifacts, smuggled from the remnants of the Soviet Empire into the heart of Sweden.
You put it on a ship and you offloaded it in Sweden. It was a very successful route which they used for a number of years.
The voice you just heard belonged to Stephen Davis, an investigative journalist who dedicated 4 years unraveling the mysteries surrounding the Estonia disaster. Davis, one of the staunch advocates for justice in this case, had extensive contact with Richard Tomlinson, a former MI6 agent during the time of the tragedy. In an interview with Davis, Tomlinson disclosed some profoundly disturbing revelations.
Beware of this. Are you familiar with this story?
Yes, I know about it, but what's it got to do with you guys?
You should look into this story. We were involved in a smuggling operation on the MS Estonia, and there's more to this than meets the eye. You should investigate this.
By we, you mean MI6?
Yes, MI6.
According to Tomlinson, MI6 was involved in a smuggling operation aboard the MS Estonia, sparkling speculation about covert activities on the ferry, and interestingly, a confession emerged from a customs official revealing that he had received orders from the highest authorities to allow cars to pass through without inspecting the luggage compartment.
There will be some cars arriving on a few occasions that you shouldn't inspect.
Not inspect? Who said that?
It's an order.
An order from whom?
Yes, from the highest authority, as high up as it gets.
Is it from the king?
No, it's not from the king, but very high up.
Lennart Henriksson was directed on 2 occasions in September 1994 to allow certain cars to pass without inspection. More specific on the 14th and 20th of September, but on the second occasion though, he chose to inspect the car anyway, and as he understood it, he found boxes containing military electronics. But unfortunately, Henriksson was away on the day of the disaster and lacks any information about that day. But Henriksson isn't the only man with potential insight into this smuggling operation. There are 3 more, but all stories are different from one another. You see, after Henriksson's admission, the rumor of smuggling hit society like a bomb. In response, the then government appointed an investigator named Johan Hirschfeldt, whose task was to examine whether this was indeed true. It does sound intriguing, doesn't it? Many thought so, but after a considerable period, Hirschfeldt announced that he had completed the investigation and was ready to present the report. So, what the hell happened to this investigation?
It has been established that the Defense Forces transported military equipment on MS Estonia on 2 occasions in September 1994, specifically on the 14th and 20th of September. The transported equipment consisted of electronic gear, unrelated to weapon systems, and the material was not of an explosive nature. Regarding the transport of material on the night of the sinking, it has not provided me with any basis to assume that they attempted to transport material. Hirschfeldt has been known for having a good memory, and his investigation was indeed very brief and limited. When we had a hearing in the Parliament a few weeks later, we asked about how the orders were given and how the customs official had received instructions to allow the passage of military smuggling, and from whom. Hirschfeldt then stated that he had no recollection of it. He couldn't remember. When we inquired about the background material not included in the actual report, he mentioned that he had burned the background material. To my knowledge, it has never happened before in Swedish administrative history that a government investigator has destroyed their background material.
It seems to convey that the Court of Appeal President Johan Hirschfeldt is under suspicion for concealing crucial information regarding the investigation into secret military transports on the Estonia.
Hirschfeldt's actions must be investigated.
Johan Hirschfeldt himself claimed in April this year, at a hearing in the Swedish Riksdag,
that it was part of the mission to destroy the documentation. In several reports in recent days...
Det finns inte något bevarat bakgrundsmaterial.
Varför inte?
Nej, jag valde att inte redovisa något sånt. Jag valde att redovisa den här.
Av vilka skäl finns inte bakgrundsmaterialet kvar?
You see, the fact is that Hirschfeld's report is accurate, but it's entirely uninteresting because it merely confirms what the customs official had confessed, and it didn't uncover anything else. And the fact that Hirschfeld burned all the background material is highly controversial. For a government investigator to destroy crucial and important documents in an investigation where the lives of over 800 people are at stake is simply absurd. Hirschfeld had no explanation for why he did this either. Such actions only fueled more anger and more disappointment towards the MS Estonia investigation. And that's not so weird, is it? Søren Lindman served as Sweden's defense attaché at the time, making him a potential key holder to information about the smuggling, but he claimed to be completely oblivious to the whole affair. Lindman suggested that KSE, Sweden's spy organization, might be behind it, emphasizing that he would have known if it were otherwise.
I cannot rule out the possibility that there were goods in Russia that could be transported across the border to Estonia, and it wasn't difficult, and then shipped on to Sweden, sometimes even without the knowledge of Swedish authorities.
Did you cooperate with them?
I know they were there, but whether there was cooperation or not, I leave that open.
If they wanted to acquire equipment, did you help them?
I won't answer that question.
We're talking about September 1994 now.
I heard that.
Did you help them acquire the equipment?
I won't answer that question.
And Richard Tomlinson, the individual we discussed earlier, speaking to journalist Stephen Davis, Tomlinson boldly asserted that material was smuggled onto the Estonia on the night it sank, an assertion in stark contrast to Hirschfeld's version, who claimed to have no grounds to assume any attempted material transport on the night of the disaster. But let's scrutinize the characters of these two individuals. Hirschfeld appeared peculiar and elusive in interviews, burning documents and avoiding in-depth responses, while Tomlinson, a man without a country and already wanted by MI6 for revealing their dark secrets earlier, posed as an intriguing figure, and he was a man with nothing left to lose. So, whose story is looking more far-fetched?
The cargo could have had no connection with the accident.
Even though background materials were burned without reason, Richard Tomlinson's revelation regarding MI6 involvement in the smuggling and passengers testifying about military transports boarding Estonia just hours before disaster, the government dismissed these as mere conspiracy theories. Consequently, the pursuit of truth seemed futile, and people began to give up. Years passed, and Estonia slowly faded from public memory, leaving unanswered questions lingering. Until 2019, when two Swedish investigative journalists took matters into their own hands, determined to unveil the truth once and for all. After 25 long years, the pursuit of truth took center stage in the hands of two men, named Henrik Evertsson and Linus Andersson, hailed as heroes by some and viewed as rebels by others. They embarked on a mission to unravel the mysteries that had haunted Estonia for decades. Under a German flag, they set sail into the Baltic, capitalizing on the fact that Germany never signed the peace agreement. Their hope was to navigate the waters without being bound by the rules that prohibited diving at the wreckage. And to their surprise, the Coast Guard awaited them, prepared for confrontation. They positioned themselves directly above the wreckage of Estonia, obstructing any attempt to dive beneath the waters.
Turva, this is MS Fritz Reuter.
Fritz Reuter, this is Turva replying.
I have a question to ask you. Do you want to maintain your position, or can you move away?
I see that you're approaching our location. What are your intentions?
We are a documentary team that are making a documentary about the MS Estonia disaster.
Yes, I understand. Are your intentions to do any underwater operations?
Yes.
In that case, I must inform you that the wreck of Estonia is the final place of all the people lost in this disaster.
We know that. We are aware of that. But we are sailing under German flag. Therefore, I believe that we should be allowed to carry out our mission.
One last question for you. Do you have any Swedish, Finnish, or Estonian nationalities on board?
We have 2 Swedish, yes. Tuva, this is Fritz Reuter. Did you copy that? We are a German-flagged vessel on international waters.
Fritz Reuter, Tuva. Yes, we understand that. And with regard to maritime safety, we are ready to move half a nautical mile away.
This was the first time in almost over a decade that someone managed to bypass the Coast Guard to perform a dive at the wreck of Estonia. It's crucial that you observe carefully now, because if you blink, you might miss what's happening here. History is about to repeat itself, and you're about to witness something that changed the mystery forever.
RV has visual contact with the wreck. Vänta. Oj, titta. Jag säger jävlar. Jävlar. Helt uppmosad.
A German-flagged vessel is suspected of disturbing the peace around the MS Estonia, according to
The Finnish Coast Guard believes that the purpose of deploying an underwater robot
I'm
was to
wrapping up in the Baltic Sea, where a German-flagged diving vessel is suspected of sending underwater
According to the Coast Guard, they
received information that there are 2
Swedes
Swedes
are
on board.
suspected of violating
Definitely want to show our
gravesite of
support
MS
for Henry Collinus. To us, they're heroes.
I remember when it happened. It was all over the news and the internet. After 25 years of injustice, something occurred that changed everything, perhaps bringing us closer to a semblance of justice. Henrik Evertsson and Linus Andersson argued that the wreckage was not adequately investigated in 1994 as claimed by the government. For years, many experts proclaimed that there must have been a significant hole somewhere on the side of the Estonia, considering the rapid sinking of the ship. But the government dismissed these claims, labeling them as mere conspiracy theories. Evertsson and Anderson descended to the wreckage on the 21st of September 2019, refuting official statements and uncovering the 4-meter-long hole on the hull side. Following this revelation, Henriksson released his own documentary titled The Discovery That Changes Everything. Despite contributing to a potential answer in the sea of uncertainties, years of injustice towards the families, and a bizarre investigation, the 2 men still risked being sentenced to 2 years in prison for filming at the Estonia site. The tragedy of Estonia shook many to their core, leaving an indelible mark on those affected by its profound impact. It wasn't just one of the largest maritime disasters in modern times, it was also an eye-opener for some regarding trust in their own leaders. You see, we put trust in our government, believing in transparency and justice, but what happens when that trust is broken, shattered to pieces by the weight of obscure truths and concealed realities? In the aftermath, the call resounds louder than ever. We deserve a better world.
25 years ago, I survived the sinking of MS Estonia. I was able to return home to my family and continue living. Thousands of others didn't reunite with parts of their families. It was a tough night and also challenging to move forward, to be a survivor, a witness. Couldn't bear how we survivors and relatives weren't listened to, how our testimonies didn't matter, and how relatives weren't included in making important decisions. How could a country like Sweden act in such a way?